Hello and welcome to tonight's special After Dark show. I'm Isha Azim from Racing with Isha, and with me I have Ben Schneider from Grid Live Encore and NASCAR.info, Nicole Fry from Fans in Focus Media, and Joe Samaniego. And making his After Dark debut, we have Kobe Lambeth alongside Jessica Ball, who is making her Grid Network debut on tonight's special show. Jessica, welcome to Grid Network and going straight into After Dark.
Thanks, Isha. Great to be here. I'm really excited to get involved with the programming in the Grid Network. And it's 3 a.m. in the morning, but that's not stopping me from sharing my passion of motorsport. So looking forward to it.
Yep, it's lovely having you here tonight. Now, as always, a big thank you to our Patreon investors, Colin, Deshelle, Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew. You too can invest in the Grid Network through Patreon or Buy Me a Coffee. Plus, you can now invest through a YouTube membership, which will officially launch on Sunday. Now, with that being said, let's get this fun show on the road. Ben, how's Formula One going in China so far?
Well, aside from being the Max Verstappen show up front, despite the fact that he didn't start on the front row of a sprint race, I think it's gone quite well, actually. We had some great battles in the sprint, and we'll get into some battles that we may see later tonight or tomorrow morning, depending on what part of the world you're in. I guess if you're in Asia, it's this afternoon. But let's get into it here. The first time since 2019 that we've had a Chinese Grand Prix back on the Formula One calendar. The Shanghai International Circuit hosted an F1 sprint race for the first time as well. And for the first time this year, Max Verstappen won that sprint race with a dominating 13-second win. Hamilton in second looked pretty good. Perez in third place, you see him there as well. He moved up there from fifth place as Sainz and Alonso were battling. Alonso, you see down the bottom of the screen, had to retire his car due to some damage from that incident. We're bringing here for the first time on Grid Live show, and hopefully not the last, a special moment for us here at Grid Network, an all-female F1 panel. Hopefully we'll have many more occasions like this as well, welcoming Jess to the team again. But Jess, we'll start with you for the first question here. Was yesterday's sprint an indication that, assuming Red Bull has no issues, third place is a toss-up between the other top teams of Aston Martin, Ferrari, Mercedes, and McLaren?
Well, as you were saying, Max Verstappen really dominated that sprint towards the end of it. And we thought that it was going to be a nice battle between Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen at the end. But Lewis Hamilton won wide, and it was the same status quo. And don't forget, Max Verstappen started on the fourth on the grid as well. But I think it could be a different situation in terms of the midfield part of the grid rather than what's happening with Red Bull, because the sprint format is completely different. They're having the sprint shootout and the sprint on the Friday and Saturday before they actually got to the main qualifying in the afternoon. And then we got the main race later on as well. So, and then also allowed part ferme as well for the qualifying, whereas they couldn't change it before for the main race, which means that they might have had different setups for the sprint and the main race, which makes it, I think, a bit more eye-opening as well. McLaren obviously struggled a bit at the start of the sprint race, but in the main qualifying session, they must have changed the setup somewhere, and it helped them get one of their best qualifying results of the season. So I do expect the likes of Lando and Oscar Piastri to step up, and same with obviously Ferrari, well, Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc. They had a interesting fight, let's just say, but let's hope they can keep the squabbles on the track and not get involved in too much argy-bargy.
Incredibly well said. I would have to agree. I think with the limited runtime we've had this weekend with the issues regarding reliability and distance, I think third place especially is like any team's possibility. I think we're really going to have to wait and see how the race kind of plays out, whether we have issues with tire drag and whether cars can simply stay on track, because that seems to be a pretty big issue for Shanghai. And so it's anybody's game.
Yeah, great answers from both of you guys, Jess and Nicole. I'm going to have to second that. You know, I think that first and second place is obviously going to Red Bull if there are no issues. And then third place, I think while there is a possibility that we could have an Aston Martin or Mercedes there, I think it's more likely to be between a Ferrari and a McLaren. But yeah, I pretty much second everything you guys said, and I think it's definitely going to be a toss-up between these teams.
And important to note, every feature race we've had this year, obviously the sprint was a little bit different yesterday, but every feature race, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, and Japan, Max Verstappen has won. Sergio Perez has followed him home in second. Of course, Max retired from Australia. That was the one race this year where Checo was off the pace a little bit, but every time Max has won, Checo's been right there as well. So if he wins, I'd say we're a pretty safe bet for a Red Bull 1-2 finish. Now, while those teams will be battling for third and the top 5 positions a little bit down the leaderboard there as well, the midfield looks just as close. Haas and Sauber have 1 car each in the top 10. Alpine had both cars make it out of Q1 without an issue. Yuki Tsunoda and Lewis Hamilton, bit of a surprise there, did not make it out of Q1. Just which driver do you see making the most progress that's not currently in the points as we start the race, maybe finishing there?
Well, there's one obvious answer to that question. It's got to be Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton has been the most successful driver at the Chinese circuit, and we have not been in the Chinese Grand Prix since 2019, so obviously 2020, 2021, and 2022, and 2023. It didn't happen because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and Lewis loves this circuit. He was very upbeat despite the fact that he didn't have the best of qualifying, and it was potentially due to the traffic potentially as well. And we saw his performance. He did so well in the sprint race, and he was able to hold off the guys behind him as well. So I'm expecting Lewis Hamilton to climb his way back up and hopefully potentially get in the points as well. And I think the only distinguish between Lewis and George, I think this weekend, is they changed out a little bit between the sprint and the quali, which I don't get because Lewis seems to be happy with the setup in the sprint. But yeah, I'm keeping my eye out on Lewis Hamilton to try and make his way up into the points.
I think it'll definitely be an interesting race as far as point contenders go. With so many teams seeming so strong, at least on like 1 or 2 lap, like fast race pace, I would have to say though my bet would be on Lance Stroll. He's sitting at number 11 right now, and as we know, the Aston Martin is very speedy with Fernando Alonso up in P3. So I think he has a good shot at getting at least a couple of points for the Aston Martin team, and hopefully both of them come home with some decent finishes.
All right, those are going to be my 2 picks as well. Obviously, Stroll has a fast car, and he's the closest to the points. And of course, I think we all expect Lewis Hamilton to finish a little bit higher than where he's starting, especially if his sprint race pace is any indication. Now, one driver people will be watching as well, Guan Yu Zhou, starting in 16th with Sauber there. 9th place in the sprint race, 1 place short of scoring a point in that sprint race in his home country here. So, Nicole, if he gets points today, can he use that as momentum to salvage his season and potentially find a race seat for 2025?
I would love for that to be the case. I think Guan Yu Zhou is a fantastic driver, and he has shown that he is more than capable of handling a Formula One car, though I will say I don't know if getting points even in his home race is going to be enough to save his seat for next season. All the seats seem to be on the line, and there's a lot of shakeups and a lot of changes coming when it comes to the driver lineups for the 2024, 2025, and even into the 2026 season. I think all of it is very much up in the air at the moment. And so we'll have to wait and see, but I really hope that he does well regardless and that he is able to use that to his advantage and kind of lever himself and advantage himself into a seat next year.
Yeah, I don't really see Zhou Guanyu scoring any points today. I know that he had a decent performance in the sprint race, but I don't think he's going to be able to score any points during today's actual race. And if he were able to score points, I don't think it would do much to in his favor or to give him an advantage in securing a seat because there are going to be so many drivers and teams who are out of contracts at the end of the season. As Nicole pointed out, it's going to be a big shakeup at the end of the season for 2025's lineup. So I don't think that scoring any points in his home Grand Prix is going to give him much of a leverage over a new contract for next year. But regardless, it is his home Grand Prix, so it would be nice to see him put up a great performance.
All right, lots of seats still to be determined for 25. Of course, the only teams that have their lineup secure, Ferrari and McLaren. I guess you could say Aston Martin as well. We all expect Lance Stroll to continue on with that rolling contract, and Fernando Alonso just announced an extension this week as well. All right, do we have the music? I know we had an issue with this last time a little bit. If we can try to get that rolling here, we'll go into the lightning round. It sounds good on my end. Hopefully it does on yours as well. So let's go ahead and roll right into this here. Lando Norris starting in 4th. He's in reach of another podium. Isha, did he choke the start of a sprint race yesterday, and is that a lesson learned for today's feature race?
Most definitely, Ben. He definitely did. Starting on pole and then giving that up on the first turn, he definitely did choke, and I think he's going to be revising what went wrong so he can correct it for the race.
I agree with Isha. I think P1 was a great opportunity for him. It was a shame that he wasn't able to capitalise, and I think McLaren have the pace to challenge for the podium today.
All right, I didn't look ahead in the script as much. I was just getting back from a track meet, so this is totally unintentional, but kind of to the point that I was just making here. Lance Stroll starting 11th. No official clear confirmation yet with his return to Aston Martin. Of course, his father, Lawrence Stroll, heavily involved with the ownership in that team. So, Jess, where do you rate his chances of coming back with Aston 25? Is it 100%, 50%, less than 25? What would you rate his chances at?
I would say 50-50 really, because Alonso obviously secured his contract for the next few years with the Honda power. And if Stroll wasn't to get a seat, I'm almost certain it'll be Yuki Tsunoda with the Honda tyres, I think. So Lance Stroll is not 100% certain yet, but he's got to work his hardest for the rest of the season to secure his seat.
I would definitely agree. I think it's a 50-50 chance for him. I think Aston Martin is in a very good position to kind of maybe get in a different driver, given how crazy the driver market is right now. And I could see them taking a risk and saying, yeah, we're just going to have a new driver and see if that helps any of our standings.
Yeah, I'm going to make that 3 in a row and also go 50-50. Not much more to add besides what you guys have already said, but I think that, the Aston Martin, we all know, is performing pretty good this season so far. So I think that at the end of the season, they're going to be maybe going for a shakeup. If they do end up going for Lance Stroll, I think it would mostly be because his dad is so heavily involved in the team.
I guess I'm the cynical one over here. I just kind of feel like that's his seat until he decides it's not. So I'm going to say 99.9%. I won't go fully 100 until we get official confirmation, but I'm going to put my chips on the table and say he's going to be back in that seat next year. All right, George Russell, he started, or finished rather, 5th, 6th, 7th, DNF, the one race in Australia rather as well. Is he more likely to finish on the high end of that? We'll go one spot higher actually, 4th, or one spot lower in 8th, or somewhere in between. Nicole, what do you think?
I think it's hard to say. The Mercedes isn't looking super strong at this track, so I'm going to say he's probably going to be sitting around 8 or 9. I don't see him moving up much higher than that, unfortunately.
I'm going to say I think I see him going up to about 6th place, but, we got to see what happens in the race.
All right, Charles Leclerc finished ahead of Carlos Sainz yesterday. Can he do it again today? Will there be any more inner conflicts with that Ferrari team?
I'm actually really excited to see what happens during the race because it seems like there's really a rivalry going on between the two of them. So it's interesting to see what's going to happen. And honestly, I think I see Carlos Sainz finishing ahead of him.
I have to agree with Isha. Sainz has been looking on top form ever since he got dropped out of Ferrari in favour of Lewis Hamilton. He's just been on it all season and beating him every single time. And he's just motivated to try and get a seat for next season. So I think Sainz will finish ahead of Leclerc today.
And I'm going to make that a 3 for 3. I think at this point, it's no question in my mind that he's probably going to do better than his teammates. He's definitely on a roll, and I don't think that's going to stop anytime soon.
Well, we had the standings up. I was thinking to myself, it's kind of surprising that Leclerc's ahead of Sainz because I feel like Sainz has been running better. And then I remembered, of course, he missed a race, so that explains it there. If he hadn't missed that one race in Saudi Arabia, I have a feeling he'd be significantly higher than his teammate right now with how he's been performing this season. So he is a man on a mission for sure. Another man on a mission, Daniel Ricciardo, I think trying to prove a lot of doubters wrong. Today he's starting well ahead of his teammate. Question says, does he need to score points? I'm going to modify that. How badly does he need to score points, given his current situation, Jess?
He definitely needs to score points. Yuki Tsunoda has been outperforming the car throughout the entirety of the season so far, whereas Daniel Ricciardo has not. And there's certain people waiting in the wings, like Liam Lawson, to take Ricciardo's seat if he doesn't perform. So Ricciardo definitely needs to score points today.
Absolutely, and I think he is desperate to do that. Yuki Tsunoda isn't just leading his team in points. I think he's also just quite leading the team at this point. And if Daniel Ricciardo can't change anything soon, it's going to be a very bad wake-up call for him and all of his fans.
And you see him down there, tied for the second longest odds for winning this race. Although, again, I think there's really only one man who we expect to be able to stand on the top step of the podium should nothing go wrong. And on that note, 3 times this race, the Chinese Grand Prix has had 0 lead changes. Nicole, is Max Verstappen going to lead from start to finish and make that 4 here today?
I'm going to say no. With the tire strategies and potentially with some issues of cars staying on track, I think that this might be the year we see a little bit of change. But that might be a little too optimistic. We'll see.
Well, I'd love to be as optimistic as Nicole, but I think I'm going to go with an obvious yes for Max keeping it to 4 times.
Oh, it's a tough one, but due to the fact that we've not been at the Chinese Grand Prix since the hybrid year, we don't know. Well, since 2019, we don't know how the cars are going to behave in these new generation of cars. So I think we could see some lead changes, but I'm being less optimistic as Nicole. I think the only lead changes will be between the 2 Red Bulls.
You know, Jess, I like the way you're thinking because it is a little bit of a wild card, but we did have the sprint yesterday, and Verstappen still was opening up almost a second to lap. So I've got to lean towards it probably being a clean sweep, and he'll lead every lap here today in the feature race as well. Although I would love to be proven wrong, so hopefully Checo or perhaps even a couple of Ferraris can get up there and make things interesting. All right, that's it for the lightning round. Now let's continue on here and talk about one team we've yet to go in depth on, and that's Williams. Pointless this season, and not a great result in the sprint or in qualifying as well. 14th and 20th following rough 2 races in Australia and Japan where they crashed a couple of cars as well. And then break until Miami for the team, Logan Sargent's home race. And then, of course, we'll get into the heart of a European season here. Just how big would scoring points be for this team right now? Having 2 cars in one piece, leaving China, would that be considered a win for where Williams is at this point?
It's a shame that we're thinking that because they're such a historic team that has been in Formula One for quite a long time. That's been picking up wins and podiums. Last season, it's been one of their strongest seasons in the last few years with Albon, the helm of that team. But even Albon seems to be struggling, I think. So having points will be a huge stepping stone when we head to Miami. And with the chassis situation, they can't afford to get damage. And the track evolution is so key around it. Like there's corners, especially in the middle sector, where they could lose so much grip if they can't keep their car in the right direction. So they just got to focus on keeping consistent, avoid the contact maybe from other cars, but also get involved if they can. And I think they're one of the only teams to not score a point this year, apart from obviously Alpine and Kick Sauber. So if Williams get on a good foot today, then this could be huge for them. But they just got to keep their car on the track first, because otherwise we could see the likes of Valtteri Bottas or Zhou Guanyu getting points before Williams.
It's definitely going to be an interesting race for the team. I think they desperately are wanting not just some points, but also to leave a race with both their cars undamaged for the first time in a little while. We'll kind of have to wait and see. This track is tricky. We haven't really I don't think have been able to see like how well they're truly going to perform in this kind of race scenario. And I think it is just going to be a very interesting day for their team. But if they can leave China with a whole bunch of points and 2 really good cars, I think that's going to be an absolute success for the team.
All right, well, the Chinese Grand Prix gets underway in just a few hours' time, 3 a.m. here on the East Coast. You can figure out time zones from there, depending on what part of the world you're watching this in. Be sure to check that out. And, of course, that's why we're on our second After Dark show here in 3 weeks following Japan. Now, the 2024 season calendar, of course, came out. We have Australia first, and then China and Japan here, or Japan and China, I guess, rather, back-to-back. The Middle East season opening up, portion of the season opening up with Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, and then we go to Miami and then over to Europe. So, Isha, I want to get your thoughts on this. There's been a lot of talk about grouping the regional races, trying to ease the burden on these teams here with 24 races in a season now. As we know, a team like Williams has one bad weekend. It has a ripple effect all the way until we hit Europe. So what are your thoughts on trying to align the calendar a little bit more for these teams?
I mean, as with any decision in Formula One, there are pros and cons. I personally think that grouping regional races together is a pretty good idea because it does lessen the load on the teams and, all the people that are working in each team to transport parts and to just put together a great Formula One race weekend. And I think it's a thing that we can all agree on, that 24 races in a calendar season is a lot. So I think that grouping them together is a pretty good idea. The only downside that I do see is what happens with Williams in the case that a car crashes out and then it's hard to get those parts or to get a spare car. So I think that besides that, grouping the regional races together is very beneficial to the teams and to everybody that works within Formula One.
I agree with Isha that really about the regional races is a lot better than it was previously, because one moment you would be at Bahrain and the next minute you'll be somewhere in Europe potentially, or for the next race, and it just wasn't on, because you have loads of teams that have been working flat out for certain amount of races, and we even had triple headers last year, and it just put a load on the team. So to have it spread out into different regions, as it were, is a good idea. But I'm a bit worried, obviously, for more teams that are lower down the grid. Even Williams, if they break their parts, then we may have just one car team for some races, which is not ideal. But it allows more people to experience some races in specific regions. Still don't get why Miami and Canada are at different places. Same with Las Vegas. I just don't get it. But of course, money. But apart from that, it's a good idea.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I do like how we're slowly, hopefully, moving towards having more regional races in order. And I also think it's really interesting because it adds a new element of strategy, exactly like Williams is facing right now. They have to be strategic about not only what parts they're producing for their cars, but also just how they're moving their team members about, how they're getting damaged pieces back to the factories and then back to the racetracks. And I think it's something that a lot more teams are starting to really kind of think about for their future and for the future of Formula One, obviously. And in a season where things have kind of been slow for a couple of years, just for lack of better terms, and not as exciting, I think, as some of us were hoping, I think that this provides a really exciting opportunity just to see how teams adapt to a little bit of new change.
And I'd also add that I think climate's important to take into consideration, because if you go back just a few years, we only had one race in the United States. We had Canada in the early portions of the summer, and then in October we had the race at Circuit of the Americas and then Mexico. I think in October it's probably too cold to group Canada as part of that, but if you go into the summer months, it's probably too hot down in Texas and Mexico. So there's always a load of different factors to take into consideration here. I think the one thing we can all agree on is having a 5-day turnaround from Las Vegas to Abu Dhabi to close out the year probably isn't ideal, and the teams probably didn't love that was how their season ended last year. So I think anything that we can do to try to group them together as best as possible is a benefit for these teams. So hopefully we see more of that going forward. And that's going to do it for the F1 portion of our show tonight. Let's bring Kobe and Joe back in, and let's talk about the IndyCar series, where our own Jackson Lambros is on site this weekend at Long Beach.
On site at Long Beach. Encourage everyone, check out the video, the playlist we have right here on YouTube. And one of the big things, the NTT IndyCar series, this is only their second race weekend with points on the line in 2024. And already Felix Rosenqvist looks like he's going to be a force when it comes to qualifying. Put it on the pole. Will Power's on the outside, trying to prove Jackson wrong from the battle of the mid. Battle that we're going to be following all year. Josef Newgarden won at St. Pete's, dominant fashion. He is starting third. And Alex Palou, who won the Thermal Club, the controversial all-star non-points event, 6th place. Jackson had the opportunity to talk to Josef Newgarden about his chances at Long Beach and if he could dominate the Long Beach race weekend.
Josef Newgarden, you absolutely destroyed St. Petersburg in the best way. Led 90% of laps, pole position, Grand Slam. Do we think you're going to be able to carry that dominance into another street circuit here at Long Beach?
I think it's possible. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I think we're in a good position to have a super strong weekend, and I'm excited to see how we come out of the gates here. But it's hard to predict. This IndyCar just changes so rapidly. You can have one good weekend or one good year, and then the next weekend or the next year you're in a different spot. But I feel the potential is there for us. I don't know if it'll be St. Pete-esque performance, but I hope it's there.
Now, Jess, Kobe, got to ask you both. Is Newgarden a favorite among the top 6 starters at Long Beach?
Well, Newgarden, yeah, he's had a strong start to the season. And my thoughts going into Long Beach is we're only almost into the month of May, and this is only to the second round of the season, which are point scoring at Long Beach. So it's hard to tell who is potentially going to be doing well to get the win, because it's just all so close. But Josef Newgarden has done really well at Long Beach in the past. His last win around this circuit was in 2022, and it was a really great victory. And I remember he did not take the pole in that race. So you don't necessarily have to take part at Long Beach to win here. But Carl Kirkwood last year took pole and took the win. So it just shows you can win from anywhere. And I think what Josef Newgarden and the team around him need to do to win this weekend, they just got to really, really help with the fuel strategy, because that's what let them down last year at Long Beach. There was an untimely caution which happened early into the 85 lap event as well, which did not help them with their strategy. So they had to recalculate the fuel a little bit. And we know there's going to be quite a few cautions at Long Beach. It's meant to happen. So I think they just got to plan their strategy a bit more. But starting third at Long Beach, still pretty good. They got Will Power and Felix Rosenquist starting in front of them. But yeah, I still think Newgarden is one of the favourites going into this. But he just got to work a bit on his fuel strategy in order to do well.
Yeah, in other terms, they'll just have to be Penske perfect this weekend in Long Beach. I think Josef Newgarden is definitely one of the favorites, but I wouldn't say that he's the outright favorite to win. Like you mentioned, Jess, there's some great drivers started up in the top six. Felix Rosenquist on the pole will be quite a story of him if he can take Meyer Shank racing to victory lane in this race. And Will Power showing he still has a lot left in the tank as well. Colton Herta, Marcus Ericsson, Alex Palou, some really good drivers who know how to get it done on the street courses. I think any one of those six drivers can end up winning this race. I can't really pick one, but I think Josef Newgarden and Team Penske will have a lot of competition come Sunday.
Competition on Sunday is going to be fierce. Of course, the Long Beach circuit, been around forever. The track, one of the most demanded. And last year, Kyle Kirkwood got it done. This year, he is starting 10th, though. So some of the top 10 statistically, that looks good. But compared to winning from the pole last year, leading 53 out of the 85 laps, that saw 6 lead changes and 2 full course cautions. He's going to have a bunch of work tomorrow, today, if you're depending on what time zone you're at. But overall, Jackson did ask Kyle Kirkwood about his chances. Here's what he had to say.
Kyle Kirkwood, you're defending Long Beach champion. How are we feeling going into this weekend?
Yeah, fantastic. Obviously, Andretti's really good here in the past. They've won a lot of races here in the past 10 years or so. So a lot of confidence with that. But there's also a target on my back now that I'm the defending champion. So a bit of confidence, a bit of pressure as well. But excited to be back here. Excited to be back on the streets of Long Beach. It's just a fun track to drive in general.
You follow a really long line of Andretti Autosport drivers to win here. Obviously, Colton Herta, Alex Rossi when he was still a part of this crew. Team Penske's coming off a real dominant stretch, especially at St. Petersburg, first, third, and fourth. What is your guys' approach to bringing fight to them this weekend?
I mean, just doing the same things we always do here. I mean, that's all it's going to really take, right? I think the year before I won, it was Joseph, right? So they're always contenders. It's always hard to win a IndyCar race in general, but this one is one of our better ones. So just, I mean, doing everything that we normally do here is the important thing. Obviously, St. Pete wasn't exactly perfect by any means for our team, but we can improve off of it, and we feel like we're in a better spot than we were last year, even given that we still won here and finished first, second, and fourth. So we're in a good spot.
Things in a good spot. Jess, do you think Kyle Kirkwood could take his team from 10th place to the first place, top 7 at the podium? And will that be more based on the raw speed of that Andretti Honda? Or are we looking at strategy or even luck with the cautions?
I think a combination of all three, really, because if you're looking at the results from last season in 2023, Long Beach was Kyle Kirkwood's one of 2 wins throughout his campaign. He finished just outside the top 10. We know that Long Beach is one of his favourite tracks, but some people were just very unlucky last season due to the cautions. So he's got to time his strategy right as well. He knows he's got some fast drivers ahead of him as well. I'm keeping my eye on Will Power a bit more because he was struggling a little bit in terms of in free practice 1 and 2. He kept crashing into the wall and getting some damage as well. So there could be certain drivers that may have not done well in practice, but done well in qualifying, and hopefully they're trying to rectify that. But for Kirkwood, hopefully it's just an odd day in the office and he's able to rectify that because he is a quick driver around here and he could be the first driver to potentially get 2 in a row as well. Newgarden wasn't able to do that last season, but I'm almost certain that Kyle Kirkwood could do it, but it's going to be a tall order because not many drivers around Long Beach have won from 10th on the grid, and it is a street circuit. The walls are very unforgiving, and we've seen Kyle Kirkwood struggle a little bit before in another series he's taken part in, and I think Kirkwood's win last season really helped with Grosjean finishing in second place with that brilliant teamwork that the Andretti's were doing, and Grosjean was happy that he was able to help Kirkwood in the way. So Kirkwood is going to hope that his teammate this season is going to help him a little bit more there too, because I think that really helped them secure the 1-2 last year. But yeah, Kirkwood needs to step it up, I think. But 10th, it's not all doom and gloom.
Yeah, I think Kyle Kirkwood's number 27 Honda is certainly going to be a lot stronger in race trend than qualifying trend. Yeah, it was really weird looking at the qualifying order and see how they were running in practice. A lot of cars that look really good in practice, not necessarily the fastest. In qualifying, Arenas VK posted this on his social media channel, say, not really happy with his qualifying result, but he feels really good about the race tomorrow, based on how they were running in racetrack. I think the same thing's going to happen with Kyle Kirkwood. I agree with the point you brought up, Jess. I think it's going to be a combination of all three. I think Kyle Kirkwood's car is definitely going to go up through the running order. I think that car looks really good in race trim, so he should pick off quite a few spots. And I think strategy is also going to come in hand as well, and also the cautions as well. That's going to play a factor in this situation. And I think if the caution comes out for the right time at Kyle Kirkwood, he could find himself in the catbird seat and gain quite a few positions and really put himself in position. I'm also want to say I'm really glad that IndyCar decided to listen to the drivers. So whenever there's a caution, now they're going to actually throw it instead of try to hold the caution until we cycle through the pits, which really, is not really the best thing to do. So I really think all those three things are going to play a factor on the result that Kyle Kirkwood can get. I think he's going to need a little help. It's going to be really hard to come from 10th to the lead, but certainly not impossible. I just know that Long Beach at the street circuit, track position really matters.
Anytime, street course, track position. Interesting to know, since we keep talking about starting up front, Kyle Kirkwood in the top 10. Counting back to kart and now the IndyCar series, 6 times the winner has come from outside the top 10. Oddly enough, though, 17th place, one of the few spots outside the top 10 where twice the winner has come from. Paul Tracy in 2000 and Mike Conway in 2014. In case you're wondering, Lionel Lundqvist, he has started 17th. He's going to try to become the third driver to do that. And all the Arrow McLaren drivers, they are started outside the top 10. Not exactly a great qualifying day at all. Roman Grosjean, as you mentioned earlier, last year's second place, starting 16th. So we got a good amount of names outside the top 10. Kobe, can a podium or a win be reached by anyone outside the top 10? And who will you be watching to achieve that?
Yeah, I'll be watching quite a few drivers starting outside of the top 10. I think a podium is certainly doable for quite a few of these drivers. A win, it might be a little difficult, but certainly not impossible as we've seen in the past. One driver who I think could potentially win outside the top 10, he's starting 11th. So right outside of that is Scott McLaughlin from Team Penske. Scott McLaughlin looked really good in race trim. I really look for him to gain quite a few positions, and if the chips fall his way, we very well could see him, finish on a podium or even better, get a race win. I was very surprised to see, the Arrow McLaren car, especially Alexander Rossi and Pato O'Ward, not make it out of Q1 in qualifying, and they also look great in race trim. So I think Arrow McLaren could certainly gain quite a few spots. If I had to pick one of the drivers to get a podium, I think it would be Pato O'Ward. I think he was probably one of the drivers who was most disappointed in his result. And one of the drivers I'm really going to be watching is the 2023 Formula 2 champion, Teo Porcher, making his IndyCar debut. It's really hard to ask any rookie, to make their debut on a track like Long Beach. And I think he's handling it really well. Coming up to speed nicely. Aaron McLaren's prepared this guy really well. He's a driver who could very well be racing in Formula One right now or next year. A lot of people are really high on this young Frenchman, and I really expect to see him do some good things in his IndyCar debut.
I agree with you as well. I was very shocked with Pato O'Ward, especially because he was doing so well in practice. I was thinking, right, he's going to be up there near the top in qualifying, and I was going to be like, good, that was going to be my pick a winner. And then suddenly he got knocked out in and not participating in the fast, which is very, very frustrating. But Taupo is an interesting one, and for those of you that know me outside of this, I'm a big F2 fan, and I was able to see Pourchaire's winning season, and it came down to the final race in Abu Dhabi, and it was just great to see his determination to do well, his experience, his racecraft was just incredible. I remember the race he had in Bahrain as well, which was absolutely fantastic too. And I know a couple of weeks ago, I know Kobe, Matt and Joshua Birch were discussing about Prema going to INDYCAR. And I think this race for me is going to determine, I think it's going to be a good eye-opener on how could Teo Pourchaire do under pressure in an INDYCAR setting to see if he can get a seat next season in Prema, which is big in the F2, F3 scene. And of course, we've got like Callum Ilott waiting in the wings as well, who did pretty decent in St. Petersburg. But keep my eye on Teo Pourchaire. I'm also keeping my eye on Romain Grosjean as well. He finished second, as I was saying earlier, at Long Beach last season. One of his only podiums, I think I know his other best result was 6th in Nashville. But apart from that, he did not have the best of season. So I'm just keeping my eye on him as he makes his way through the field. But I am keeping my eye on Teo Pourchaire for sure, because I am a big F2 fan. I like to see F2 drivers come to INDYCAR and do well, hopefully.
What a first race for him at Long Beach. Is going to be really interesting to see what will happen with that. With that said, let's do another lightning round. Kobe, Colton Herta won this race from 14th position. Can he win from 4th position?
Yes, I do think Colton Herta can get the job done, get a win at his hometown track in Long Beach or Laguna Seca. I guess you could call it both of those tracks his home track since it's out there in California. I think that whenever Colton Herta finds victory lane again, whether it's tomorrow in Long Beach or later on this year, I think it's going to be a huge boost in morale for him, because last year really difficult for him, and I really think you get that win, you're going to see Colton Herta start to perform a lot better on a more consistent basis.
I think Colton Herta was so close in the last few Long Beach races, so I think it's definitely not impossible for Colton Herta to win from 4th place. I think it's going to be a very close battle up front with the likes of Rosenqvist, Newgarden, Herta, and even flying in Pato O'Ward as well. So I think he still could potentially do it, but expect a huge fight in order for him to achieve it.
Alex Palou has 3 starts here. 5th place is his worst finish out of all those starts. So Jess, will he finish in the top 5 or lower?
I don't think he'll be lower than 5th, to be honest. He has been consistent. That's what won him the 2023 INDYCAR Championship. So I think at best, he's probably going to finish in 4th, but he could potentially sneak a win if Long Beach has loads of cautions and that goes his way. And he's a strong driver around this circuit. So I think a podium, hopefully, we will see Alex Palou later on.
Yeah, I don't have much more to add there. I totally agree. I think Alex Palou is definitely going to finish inside the top 5. Maybe he'll get on the podium, or like you say, maybe a win as well. Will not surprise me to see Palou stand on the top step of the podium. But if I had to choose, I think a podium is probably where I'd go.
Tom Blomqvist, highest iron rookie in the field among Christian Rasmussen, Teo Pourchaire, Linus Lundqvist, Kevin System, and Nolan Siegel making his debut. Who finishes ahead, Kobe?
I already talked about him. I know it may surprise a lot of people. Someone making his INDYCAR debut in the streets of Long Beach. I think Teo Pourchaire is going to finish highest out of all of the rookies in the INDYCAR field. I just feel like that he's going to start off slow, and he's going to methodically work his way through the field, continue to learn this car, learn the limits, stay out of trouble, hopefully, and then we'll see him, get a really good result for Aaron McLaren and prove why either this team or another team in INDYCAR should consider him for a full-time position in 2025, assuming that the Formula One stuff doesn't work out for him.
It's really tough for me. I'm toying between Christian Rasmussen and Teo Pourchaire, but Taupo has no pressure because he's reserving. He's got nothing to lose in terms of the championship, so he's just out there having fun. So he could take it cautious throughout some of the laps as well, and potentially I think I could see him finish higher than most of the rookies. But it's going to be a close fight between Rasmussen and Paul Chab. But if he does well, I can't wait to see him in the next round as well, because he's going to race in the next round if he does well at Long Beach, and there's just no pressure for him. So he's definitely in the best situation.
Great situation. There's the odds. He's at plus 15,000. If somebody's willing to go on DraftKings, pick him. Alexander Rossi, Pato O'Ward, they're both starting together on row 7. Who finishes ahead, Jess?
Well, it's a tough call, but I have to go with the man who was looking very, very good in practice before it didn't work for him in qualifying. I'll have to go with Pato O'Ward.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I think Pato O'Ward as well. He obviously had a much stronger car than what we saw in qualifying. I really think we're going to see Pato in quite a few positions and get inside the top 10.
Last question of the lightning round. If you had to be the race strategist for a team, how many cautions do you anticipate? And just for a heads up, the last time this race went caution-free, 2016. Kobe, how many?
Well, I don't think we're going to see as many cautions as we saw Laguna Sink at the end of last season, but I think I'd say 3 to 4 cautions. That's what I would plan for.
I'm gonna say 3 cautions, and I think we're gonna have one near the start. Well, one near the first half of the race. The middle, the second one is gonna be tough to judge, but there's gonna be definitely one near the end to spice things up a little bit.
Always interesting to see what happens with the NTT IndyCar when they're in Long Beach. Very unpredictable. The street courses. We have 5 past winners here at Long Beach. 6. 5 of them are in the top 10. It turns out one of the big things we know, Will Power, he is one of the past winners here, but he made some contact with the turn 8 wall. We've seen several drivers cut into close, but Will Power during free practice 2 had a big moment there. The drivers, they are pushing it hard, and of course, as we know, the cautions, they could come out randomly when we have an issue, but we don't have an issue. Green flag pit stops are going to be very important, and we've seen how the pit crews could win or lose a race. Jess, which team, in your opinion, has the most reliable pit crew in IndyCar?
That is a tough one because I only started watching IndyCar properly last year, so it's hard to gauge on who I think could potentially be the best pit crew. But based on last season, it's got to be Team Penske. They've had the most reliable pit crew for quite a while now, and we know that they have a very strong car. And I do agree that the race winning strategy could come down to pit stops. We know in Formula One as well, the wheel nuts could come loose or get stuck as well with the kick sabers, for example, and that could ruin their chances of points. But I can potentially see, I think, Penske doing well. McLaren looked good last year as well. I think those 2 teams, I think I'll keep an eye on. But again, it's hard to gauge since I only been watching IndyCar since last season.
Yeah, I really think it's going to be the usual suspects. You know, Penske, Ganassi, those 2 teams probably at the top. Then after that, Arrow, McLaren, and Andretti. But if the race is on the line, you know, and we get down to the money stop where we had that final pit stop, the most important stop of the day, I'd rather be one of those Team Penske drivers. I really think that Penske perfect, that they have to be that everywhere in every aspect of their team, and I think that they really have the best pit crew. That's the one I want to count on at the very end.
Penske pit crew, they seems to be one of the best. Chip Ganassi Racing, I feel probably very close second best. They're going to be very important in this race. Now, one of the things we didn't mention, McLaren, and earlier today, a big topic of discussion at Long Beach was David Malukas, who is not at the track racing this weekend, still sidelined after a mountain biking accident and has yet to make his first start with Arrow McLaren. Here's Jackson with the latest regarding David Malukas.
Let's talk about what should be their full-time driver, David Malukas, and a really interesting quip from Jenna Fry earlier. Gavin Ward, team principal, stated that the timeline here has not been crystal clear for when he'll be back in this car, and we could come to a point where McLaren has to talk about their future and that taking the priority, and David could ultimately not be a part of that. That's not to say that David Malukas doesn't belong in IndyCar, because I think objectively he does. He's shown his strength on and off the ovals, and is overall, I think, personality-wise, fantastic for this sport. But this always seemed like a kind of odd pairing, if you will. Nothing against David, nothing against these guys for making this move, but it didn't feel natural to begin with. But I still hope that we see David Malukas in a IndyCar.
Now, I hate to ask this question, Kobe and Jess, but we've seen how in the past, Aaron McLaren, Oliver Askew, how he was just let go. A lot of people were not happy with how that went down. With David Malukas, is his future with Aaron McLaren in doubt?
3 words, Joe. It's a business, and I know it's really hard, and it will be unfortunate for David Malukas, but at the end of the day, Aaron McLaren has to do what they feel is best for the business, and it's good to see them standing by David now and helping him recover and all of that. But at some point, they have to decide what's best for Aaron McLaren. Like, do we need to continue to wait for David Malukas to get better and hope he performs up to standard when he's returned, or do we want to start looking at one of these prospects that we probably would have signed, ahead of David Malukas if we could have? And I have to echo what Jackson said. I think David Malukas absolutely deserves to be in the IndyCar series full time. And I would really hate to see Aaron McLaren drop him, but we know Zach Brown, the McLaren's CEO, he runs this operation just like his Formula One team, and Formula One is notorious for being very cutthroat. And we've already seen how cutthroat they were with Oliver Askew. A lot of people felt like Oliver didn't really get a fair shake with the team, and it would really be crazy if David Malukas ends up, let's say, not driving for Aaron McLaren all, and they decide to move on and try to give more races to Taupo when his Super Formula commitments, when the Super Formula clashes are not here with IndyCar, and then also as well with Callum Milot, he's racing the World Endurance Championship. There could also be some openness for him to get some race in this car as well. And Gavin Ward also noted that David Malukas' injury is more serious than a lot of people thought. So we don't even know if he's going to be ready for the next race after this, or even the month of May is really up in the air when David Malukas is going to be ready to return to racing. But based on what Gavin Ward said today to Jennifer from the Associated Press, it really seems like his future really is up in the air.
Yeah, and it's hard to judge whether your driver is fit for that team if they haven't driven the car, because this is going to be his first year with McLaren, and he hasn't raced yet. And we've had a similar situation in Formula One. Daniel Ricciardo, he took Nick de Vries's seat, well deserved, in the AlphaTauri, now RB, Racing Bulls. And as soon as Zandvoort hit, he got an injury from a crash in free practice, and that ruled him out for 2-3 races. And it was up in the air on, was he going to get a seat next year? Was Liam Lawson going to take it? And that really, I think that answers the question, and Daniel Ricciardo was able to take that. I hope this is not going to be the same situation for David Malukas, because I agree, he's a great driver. He deserves to be on the IndyCar grid for most of it, and I just hope it's not serious enough for him to retire from IndyCar, because he's had such good history with IndyCar. It will just be such a shame to lose him.
It'll be a shame to lose him. Seeing him from Indy Lights, now Indy Next. We interviewed him at Portland when he was racing against Kyle Kirk for the championship. A lot of potential, huge opportunity with McLaren. This will be a rough way to lose a ride. We'll be definitely following this, and we encourage everyone to subscribe to the Grid Network as we follow this story and all of them on Grid Tonight, your weekly motorsports news program, and of course, any additional motorsports news from around the world. The Acura Grand Prix of Long Beach is at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, and unfortunately, that's the same time as another race as we bring Isha in and Ben, because we got a big race coming up at Talladega, the GEICO 500.
That's right, Joe. Start looking at NASCAR now. This is the third time we'll see pack racing this year, and it's at the third track of the pack racing tracks. It's Talladega in Alabama. So Michael McDowell took the pole as he and Austin Cindric will lead the field. The two have won the Daytona 500 with Ford and are trying to end Ford's winless streak spanning the National Touring Series. But Ben, Joe, we know that if your car starts up, you can win here from anywhere. So Ben, do you anticipate Ford will be up front and working with each other?
I do, and yeah, crazy if the streak continued today. Jesse Love taking his first win in the Xfinity race, and of course more on that on the Encore show on Monday. But yeah, still hard to believe that Ford is yet to go to victory lane this year across all the National Touring Series, and I'd say they've got a great shot at doing that just tomorrow here with the NASCAR Cup Series race at Talladega. We've talked about Ford's qualifying speed a lot this year, and how obviously they showed strong qualifying speed Daytona, and McDowell obviously took the pole at Atlanta as well. So the speed is clearly in the cars. It's just a matter of getting the cars to the finish here. But strength in numbers has generally speaking over the years benefited Ford and Chevy more than it has Toyota, and we'll get into that here a little bit later, I think, as well. But I think that Ford has a very good shot. They just have to make sure that they have enough cars left to fight at the finish, and hopefully if they work together for Ford's sake, they can finally break through and put one of them in victory lane.
I feel especially after what we saw at Atlanta, Daytona, a lot of us thought Fords, they're looking fast. They'll be in victory lane. A lot of folks, I think, are still surprised that Ford have yet to win, especially across any of the major series. That's pretty unheard of, really. But one of the big things I'm looking at with Ford, they have the speed, I think, with this car. Daytona, Logano, bad luck. Atlanta, again, is just one of those pack races where, like you said, Isha, anybody could win if you really start the car, stay on the lead lap, get yourself out of trouble. Overall, with Ford, they have a good amount of drivers that could get it done. The three Penske drivers with Blaney, Logano, and I have faith that Austin Cindric can get a win at this track. Michael McDowell, he knows how to win on these tracks. I think he carries some confidence. And Stewart Haas Racing, while I know none of those drivers have yet to win on a super speedway, I am convinced they could find that opportunity to put themselves in a position to win. So the Fords, they'll be up front. They'll be working with each other. They definitely are not going to be behind the ball.
Definitely. And now taking a look at the back row, we have a pair of Chevys that have yet to win on the super speedways. Bijan McLeod is searching for his first Cup Series win in an uncharted entry. Next to him, Kyle Larson started dead last after unapproved roof rails on his car. It's safe to assume that he can work his way to the front, but he has never won on a super speedway. So Joe, starting with you, is Kyle Larson cursed at Daytona, Atlanta, and Talladega? Why can he not find a way to victory lane like a modern-day Rusty Wallace?
I like the modern day Rusty Wallace reference just because he was so good at so many tracks. You go out there, get the win, be a championship contender, win the championship. You just cannot find anything in Daytona and Talladega. Sometimes bad luck. He's famous for flipping end over end at the straightaway start finish line on the last lap right here. I think with Kyle Larson, as talented as he is, these races are so unpredictable. You have to put yourself in the right spot to go for the win. And sometimes when you try to put yourself in the right spot, it turns into the wrong spot. If a car ahead of you gets in trouble and you got nowhere to go, or a car behind you makes it where your move is all of a sudden going to be a move that's going to cause the big crash. So overall, I think this is just one of those deals for Kyle Larson. It's truly the type of race, it's really out of his control. He can find his way towards the front. I think we all agree with that. But positioning yourself to be there on the last lap is just the hardest part. He has not done that yet. We've seen time and time again, the leader exiting turn 4 on the green flag on the final lap is not going to win the race. And there's usually chaos behind him coming to the checker flag. This is just not his style of racing, whereas here, Atlanta or Daytona.
Well, I think it's important to remember, Joe, to your point here, that if Kyle Larson had about a half gallon more gas to the 2017 Daytona 500, he'd be a 500 winner, and neither of the Busch brothers would have gone to victory lane in the Great American Race. So it's not like Kyle Larson hasn't had opportunities to run up front here at these super speedway races. It's not like he doesn't possess the skill. Obviously, clearly, he's one of the most talented drivers on the planet right now. No matter what vehicle he gets in, I think he's going to prove that next month at Indianapolis as well. But you're right, Joe and Isha. For whatever reason, he just has not been able to break through the super speedways yet. Now, Unlike Rusty Wallace, he is still very much in the prime of his career, and that could change, and could change tomorrow for all we know. Coming from the back to the front, who knows what we're going to see. The Hendrick cars obviously have speed on super speedways, and they proved that at Daytona this year with a 1-2 finish with Byron and Bowman. But yeah, I mean, it is uncanny, looking at Larson's results and his incredible success that he's had in his career, particularly since he moved over to Hendrick Motorsports in 2021 and won a championship with them right away. But on the same side of that, you think of him flipping that 42 car in this race, I think 5 years ago now. It's kind of hard to believe it's been that long since he was with Ganassi. But yeah, I mean, it does feel, the comparisons to Rusty Wallace, I think, are very apt. And we'll see if he can maybe break those comparisons with the win tomorrow.
All right, with that, now let us enter our third and final lightning round of today's After Dark show. So Ben, we'll start with you for the first question. Ryan Blaney is the favorite according to DraftKings, tied with Joey Logano. Do you think he's a safe bet or a risky pick?
I don't think there are any safe bets for this race. I think you might as well pick a name out of a hat. I mean, I genuinely think when we come to these racetracks, there's on pace alone, 20, 25, maybe even 30 cars would have a realistic chance of winning this race if they play their cards right. And as I say that, you can think of where Spire Motorsports was in 2019. A well-timed lightning strike was all it took for Justin Haley to win that race. If Landon Castle had stayed out in the Starcom car, he could have won that day. I think J.J. Yale was up there in a Rick Ware car. Cody Ware, he's back this weekend as well. You see him with the second longest odds. He was up front in that crazy summer Daytona race we got a couple of years ago where so few cars finished. Austin Dillon was really the only one that made it through the wreck that was happening as it rained. Rains in the forecast tomorrow. Who knows what's going to happen? I don't think there are any safe bets. Even the Team Penske drivers and the Fords have that speed. They might win, but so might 25 other names on that list. I can't pick a winner.
Yeah, this is the hardest pick a winner of the weekend. I mean, when your favorite is plus 1,000, when you have Max Verstappen at negative 1,000 because he's so easily going to win, it's like you need that wheel of destiny here for this race weekend. If you're going to go with the safe pick, honestly, just go with a driver that's going to win here, but I would not bet on it. Go bet on F1 if you're thinking to make something, but even then, good luck with that if you're not picking Max.
That's right. And now, Joe, back to you for the second question. RCR has both drivers starting in the top 5. Is the goal to get a win, finish in top 10, or to just bring the car home in one piece?
With the way this playoff system is, they have to go for the win. If they don't get a win this weekend, it's going to be a long stretch till we get to the end of the regular season. And I don't have the confidence in the team. They have to go for the win.
Austin Dillon for sure has to go for the win. I will never doubt Kyle Busch's ability behind the wheel, and I wouldn't put it past him to be able to find some speed and rebound with RCR here in the second half of the regular season. But if you're somebody like Austin Dillon, I think you're already so far back that you need to start thinking about winning races. I think the chances of that team turning into a weekly top 5, top 10 contender, I mean, if they do somehow do that, I think it's inevitable that they'll probably sneak a win or two out anyway. But this is a golden opportunity for somebody like Austin Dillon to solidify his playoff position in a year that otherwise hasn't gone so well for him. But I think even if you're Kyle Busch as well, one that's raced last year, I might add, he's going to be looking to do that again. I think that RCR certainly, they're not going to be satisfied with the top 10, I'll put it that way.
All right, Ben, Denny Hamlin is starting 23rd and has a history of hanging out in the back. Does he repeat that strategy or go to something new?
If anybody can get away with it, I suppose it's a guy like Denny Hamlin that already has multiple wins. He knows he's in the playoffs. But then again, every point matters with these cut lines nowadays once we get into that part of the year. And I think that stage points, playoff points certainly make a difference. And I think, the flip side of that is, I think Denny Hamlin can afford to take some more risks as well. You could maybe say it might be better for him to lay in the back and wait to make his move till the end. He can afford to miss out on the stage points. Or at the same time, he has nothing to lose because he's already punched his ticket to the postseason here. I don't think, and especially considering who Denny Hamlin is, I don't see him falling into that philosophy of hanging out at the back of the pack and waiting to make his move. I think he's going to be aggressive all day long and prove that up at the front of the pack.
I think depending on how the Toyotas perform and work together, if he can find himself in the top 5 at the end of each stage, he's going to try to go for that playoff point. But if I see him, he doesn't have his Toyota teammates around him, and he's hovering 8th place, 9th place, he ain't going to get that playoff point. I could see him maybe backing off, especially if we haven't had the big one. But in that final stage, I think it's going to be all out Denny up towards the front.
Joe, if I can just follow up on that real quick. I don't know if he's in 8th or 9th place, I still see him going for a couple of stage points there at the end. If he's in 15th place and he doesn't like what he sees in front of him, absolutely back out of the throttle and let them decide it for themselves and maybe avoid the wreck if it happens. But if he's in a position to earn some stage points, I think he's still going to try to maximize that opportunity.
All right, back to you, Joe. Now, Harrison Burton is starting in 16th place. His only top 20 finish was Atlanta. He's had 0 top 10s. Is he in a must-win position?
He is, not just to get in the playoffs. I think for his career, too. He's bringing sponsorship money for the Wood brothers, but they got Penske equipment out there. They should be much more higher up in the front. One top 20 finish, and that was at Atlanta. He has to turn it around. He needs a win.
Yeah, I'll say the same thing I said about Austin Dillon. I think, again, a top 10 would be nice, a top 5 would be even better. But I think for Harrison Burton's career's sake, like you mentioned, even Joe as well, I think, he's certainly starting to get to that point where, you're in year 3 of your full-time Cup Series effort here with the Wood brothers. It's time to start turning things around and proving that you belong at the top level of NASCAR racing here. And he simply hasn't done that yet. So, given his equipment, given how strong Ford has been in terms of showing speed on these kinds of tracks, I would definitely say it's a must-win for Harrison Burton.
All right, now last question of this lightning round. Ben, do we see the big one happening? And if so, how many are collected in the crash?
The question shouldn't be, do we see the big one? It should be, how many big ones do we see? If the finishes to recent Superspeedway races are any indication here, I'm going to say we see 3 multi-car accidents. The largest big one will probably be between 15 or 20 cars, and I expect those to all come in the 3rd stage. I think they'll mind their manners for the first 2 stages, even coming to the green and white checkered flags. But once we get into that 3rd stage, you're going to see the intensity level come up all throughout the pack, and it's inevitable at some point somebody's going to make a wrong move, and unfortunately, it's going to be a hefty repair bill for a lot of these owners.
I like that trend of, the 3 or 4 big ones. I think we're only going to see 2. I'm going to make it stage 2 coming to the checkers. I think you're going to see somebody mess up, and you're going to have 8 cars in that. And then the 3rd stage, that's where I think it's going to be overall clean. We're going to see, I'm hopeful of less wrecks. Just the way Talladega goes, could be that way or a mess. But I think we'll see coming towards the finish for the checker flag, maybe another 8 or 9 cars wreck up because nobody's going to lift as the checker flag's waving.
Wow, all right. Now that's all for our lightning round. Speaking of the big one, if it doesn't end up happening, we will see some green flag pit stops. In the past, Toyota has been at a disadvantage with too few cars. Now, with 8 cars, they'll have a good chance against Ford and Chevy if they can all coordinate. Chevrolet teams Hendrick and Trackhouse are not exactly on the same page currently. Ford and Stewart-Haas Racing have dominated this race in the past, and they could work with Penske and Keselowski. So, Joe, starting with you, which manufacturer do you see having the upper hand in this race?
I'm looking at Chevrolet. I think the strength in numbers is the big one, especially with Chevrolets. If we see you have the Hendrick Chevys and maybe a couple others pit, but then the other half, or like one of the Hendrick drivers for some reason was on the high line, couldn't make that pit stop. If there's a second group of Chevrolets, they're in there. They got that strength in numbers. Ford, I think their biggest strength, it seems like they could get their teams to work really well together. Stewart-Haas has done that. They once before dominated this race with Penske and Keselowski and RFK. That could be it. I don't think Toyota has such a disadvantage unless for some reason they get spread out exiting the pits, so then they don't have that strength in numbers. But overall, I think Chevrolet is the easy one, in my opinion.
Well, what's the saying? It's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. I think Toyota certainly are at a slight disadvantage because of their lack of numbers, although it's boosted a little bit by Legacy MC this year. But I'm going to say Toyota just because I think Denny Hamlin and Bubba Wallace in particular are 2 of the best super speedway racers in the Cup Series today. And I think that's even going to elevate the rest of their teams. And that's 6 of the 8 cars right there. I think the legacy cars are just going to be a bonus, and seeing if they can work their way up into that part of the pack and work with their manufacturer, factory teammates, if you will, Toyota as well. I think that they've got a couple of very strong super speedway racers there, and even Ty Gibbs has been knocking on the door of that first win. He's very hungry to check that off his list. Christopher Bell's been a championship 4 contender, always a threat no matter where we go. He's starting to evolve into a weekly contender for these race wins. Tyler Reddick the same way. So I think that Toyota has a very strong lineup right now, and I think you could see that play to their advantage tomorrow.
And now looking at some possible winners, this race has a history of first-time winners, and with the nature of this track, really anybody can win. So drivers like Denny Hamlin, Ryan Blaney, and Brad Keselowski do tend to be the favorites, though. So Ben, any drivers you see pulling off a possible upset win?
I think when you compare Corey LaJoie's results to Carson Hocevar just coming in, being one of the youngest drivers, in fact, possibly the youngest driver in the series, if I recall correctly, as a rookie this year, I think Corey's definitely in need of a good result here. So he's somebody that I think you've got to look out for. Obviously, we think of him at Atlanta being so strong, but Atlanta now resembles Daytona and Talladega in many respects. So this could be an opportunity for him. And then one team that doesn't even have a charter, I'm telling you, keep your eye on them. One of these days, I think they're going to break through. Beard Motorsports, Anthony Alfredo, that number 62 car. And Alfredo had a great run in the Xfinity race as well today. He is somebody that I think you have to consider a threat. This team only comes out here 4, maybe 5 times a year to run these super speedway races, run a race or 2 here or there, but they maximize their effort and they put all of their eggs into one basket here with these kinds of tracks and these kinds of races. And, Brendan Gaughan was, just a few years ago fighting for the lead when he got spun out, and there's that famous image of him tumbling over going into turn 3 at this track. But as he was doing that, he was up front going for the lead of this race. I think Anthony Alfredo could be in a similar position tomorrow. So just because that's an open car, just because it's a car that you don't see out here every weekend, you cannot count them out when it comes to Talladega.
I'm looking much further towards the front. Todd Gilliam, front row motor. They know how to win here. Michael McDowell has done that. David Reagan has done that. It would be a huge surprise, a huge upset. I'll tell you this. Not my pick a winner. I just think it's going to be too crazy, but that's a potential underdog story, and I think a lot of folks will be excited if he could pull that. Ryan Preece, a couple times in the super speedway, he seems to have a good run here and there. Unfortunately, he's more famous for the flip at Daytona where he was all injured, but I think if he has a good day, especially with Ford, if they all work together, he could be up towards the front, and then he'll be in the playoffs as well too. So those are a couple drivers I'm looking at. Overall, I think it's going to be very interesting to see how it all plays out.
Joe, I don't disagree with you on Todd Gilliland. I think that's certainly a good pick, and maybe even a good pick for pick a winner. We'll see if anybody chooses him. But I left him out of the question because the question was asking for an upset win. Even though Todd Gilliland's never won a Cup Series race, I don't know that I would consider that an upset at this point. I think you look at the speed of the front row cars. Michael McDowell's a Daytona 500 winner now, and even Gilliland himself has had some strong runs to start the year and led a bunch of laps. With where those Ford cars are in terms of pace and speed, and particularly the steps forward the front row's taken, it would be great to see Gilliland win. It would be a very good feel-good story. His father, David Gilliland, was a very strong super speedway racer as well. It would be fantastic for him, but I don't know that would be an upset at this point. So I don't disagree with you, but that's why I didn't leave him as part of the answer to the question here.
I mean, I guess I see it as more as a upset that nobody is going to be picking him as pick a winner sense aspect, but yeah, I mean, they got an alliance with Penske, so on paper they should be good, ready to be winning, but this year that has not been the case, but it'll be interesting to see what happens with them.
All right, guys. Now that's all for NASCAR. The GEICO 500 third drafting track of 2024 will be happening at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. We will be on the air 90 minutes after the Cup Series or INDYCAR, depending on which series finishes last. Ben, Supercars weekend will be a long finish. Let's get into a Supercars update.
Thank you, Isha. And yes, we'll bring Coley back for this here as well. Race 1 saw Andre Heimgartner earn his first win since the Ben Super Sprint in 2021. He started the race in third and held off Will Davison and Anton De Pasquale in the Shell V-Power team in treacherous wet conditions. So Kobe, how impressive was Heimgartner's race from avoiding the first lap crash and running a mistake-free race with a great pit stop to eventually take the lead?
Yeah, I thought it was a very impressive drive from Andre Heimgartner. How about one for the Kiwis, right? In Supercars returns to New Zealand. Before the race, Andre Heimgartner said out of any race on the schedule that he wants to win, he really wanted to win his home race. And that's saying something considering you had the Bathurst 1000 on the schedule. And for all these New Zealanders who have patiently waited for Supercars to return to see one of their very own Andre Heimgartner get the win, that was certainly a very special moment for him to get his first win in quite a handful of years. And I thought overall the drive was super impressive, and that was quite a very wet race, treacherous condition. I thought the drivers did a really good job for the most part hanging on to the cars because they were slipping and sliding all over the place. And that first lap crash with Tim Slade and Cam Waters was, really crazy there. And unfortunate that happened because Cam Waters has had quite a year in Supercars. It seemed like nothing's going right for him so far. So maybe in the second race today, Waters can really get his 2024 season going because he's really had quite a number of struggles to start off this season. So maybe he can finally start to right the ship and get a good result in race 2. But going back to Heimgartner, thought he did a really good job in this race.
Well, Chaz Monster had a tough race with a loose tire coming off, ruining his run there. We saw a lot of mistakes on pit road in race 1, even AAA Racing part of that as well. Kostecki in his first race back, Brody Kostecki had a 15th place finish carrying the number 1 car. The next race should be under better conditions, but there is still a chance of rain. So, Kobe, do you think the long time away and lack of pit stops made it where we saw plenty of mistakes from these drivers?
To be honest, Ben, I think that this is a very tough question to ask. On the one hand, you look at the Supercar schedule and you see a whole bunch of gaps in the schedule. Like some points, they're like racing once per month, and when you're not racing consistently, it's not enough time for you to build for the pit crew to get into rhythm and all of that. So naturally, mistakes are going to happen. Then when you look at other championships around the world, especially in sports car racing, some of the gaps between the rounds are very similar, and then you don't see those pit crews making a lot of mistakes as well. I think with Chaz Monster's team, this was just an unfortunate mistake. Not getting the tire type really ended up frustrating Chaz. I think he let out an F-bomb on the radio, if I remember correctly, just very frustrated because he knew he had a car that could compete, that could challenge for the win in the wet, and to see it slip away with that, understandably very frustrating. So Chaz will certainly look to turn it around in race 2 to try to get a good finish, because I have a feeling if it wasn't for that wheel that popped off, Chaz Monster could have very well challenged for the win.
All right, we'll leave it there. Full recap on tomorrow's or later today's, depending on where you are in the world. Grid Live wrap-up, so stay tuned for that. We're also waiting to see who takes Rally Croatia, so we'll bring Joe back in for that, and Kobe, take it away.
Thanks. Rally Croatia is underway, and the final day is about to start up in the coming hours. Thierry Neuville took the lead on the first day ahead of second place by 7 seconds. Then a rock caused a punctured tire for Neuville, costing him 10 seconds. Ended Friday tied for the lead with Elfyn Evans, and Saturday there was a battle between those two and Sebastian Ogier, who also won stage 10. Then the potential of rain saw different tires selected in the afternoon. Evans took the lead until stage 14 when Neuville took the lead back. The rain never showed up, and Neuville leads by 4.9 seconds over Evans. Ogier is 11 seconds behind, and Tonic a minute and 15 seconds behind. So we're going to bring Joe back on now. So here's my question for you. How confident are you in Neuville's ability to just bring it home for the overall win?
It's building confidence in me. The past year, Thierry Neuville, I always felt it was one of those drivers. He's fast, he could get the job done, but too often a mistake will occur and derail his entire race weekend, derail the championship. He looks really good this year overall. And then this race weekend, this is one I think the biggest intense battles. Him, Elfyn Evans tied at the end of Friday. That was hugely, could have gone either way, where Thierry Neuville put too much pressure on him, made a mistake here or there, lose the lead. That punctured tire, that could have escalated to something else, trying to push harder. Overall, I feel Thierry Neuville is looking really good to bring this home, and he could do that, saying he beat Elfyn Evans, he beat Sebastian Ogier, and this was all part of a team effort as well, too. The team making the tire selections, where the Toyota teams, they thought the rain was going to show up, so they went with the rain tires. Thierry Neuville did not manage to pull out ahead. If he didn't have that punctured tire, I think it'll be even further ahead. It's going to be really interesting to see if he could bring this home and continue leading the championship, because that's the big thing. The championship is really the big goal for everybody.
Yeah, we'll certainly be interested to see if Thierry Neuville can end up sealing the deal. And we'll have a full recap tomorrow on Grid Live Wrap Up. Now let's go to just for everyone's favorite game, the unpredictable game, just like Talladega. Pick a winner.
Yes, indeed. And we got the whole team in for this as well. We have people on our socials predicting the winners for all the races this weekend. And standings look like this. Matt and Ben are battling like Thierry and Evan. Still correct. So the jackpot stays at 10 for the next race weekend with 3 races or more. The F1 sprint happened yesterday. Everyone except Alex from Twitter correctly guessed Max Verstappen for the win. No surprises there, really. And you still have time to get involved if you haven't already. You can get involved on either X, YouTube chat, or TikTok. Make sure you use the hashtag #PickAWinner. Tag our socials, and we will note down your responses. And you'll get a point for every prediction you get correct. We still have 4 races remaining to pick, so we should start with it. So we'll start with F1, the Chinese Grand Prix. We'll start with you, Nicole. Who is your pick a winner for Formula One?
Well, I feel like I can't say anyone other than Max Verstappen at this race, so I'm going to play it safe. I'm going to go with Max. I don't expect anyone else to be on top of that podium.
Great.
Yeah.
Isha?
Me too. This guy right here, Max Verstappen.
Yeah, I think it's going to be unanimous. Kobe?
Max Sharpie.
I think Logan Sargent's going to find a way to shock the world here. I'm going to go. No, of course. Come on. It's so obvious. Max Verstappen. Let's just get on with the show. Jess, I'm going to make your pick for you. It's Max Verstappen. Let's go on to P7. Let's stop wasting time here.
Yeah, I think I agree with all you, Max Verstappen. And just like the Grid After Dark show for the last 2 times, we will be doing pick a 7th place. It went really well last time, so we're going to do it again. Starting with you, Nicole. Who's going to finish 7th at the Chinese Grand Prix?
My money is on George Russell. I don't know why, but it's George Russell.
I'm going to go with Oscar Piastri. I think he's going to drop down a few spots and take that 7th.
I'm going to go with Lance Stroll. I feel like I'm betting a lot, but Lance Stroll.
Yeah, and I'm going to go with the other Aston Martin driver. I think Fernando Alonso is going to slide back to P7.
And yeah, I'm going to go with...
Oh, sorry,
carry on. And I'm going to go with Oscar Piastri for P7. I was debating between George Russell and Oscar, but I was going to go with Oscar. So that's F1 done. We now move on to INDYCAR at Long Beach, and we've had a lot of discussions on who.
You forgot Ben.
So I was deferring to you since it's your first time, but I do have a pick for P7 here. So.
Oh yeah, sorry.
That's all right. Well, it gives me more time to think because I made these picks before qualifying. I picked Lewis Hamilton, but now he's stringing 18th. I'm not so sure, but I don't know. I feel like I've already locked it in. We'll see if Lewis can charge for the field. I'll stick with Lewis, I guess.
Fair shout. So now we move on to INDYCAR at Long Beach. Interesting discussions that we made and a lot of picks for this one. So I'll start with you again, Nicole. Who do you think will win INDYCAR?
I have a feeling it's going to be Will Power. I think he has a lot of potential in Long Beach, and I think the sunshine does wonders for all of the drivers. So we'll see.
I'm going to go with Josef Newgarden for my pick.
I'm going to go... Oh, boy. I think I'll go with Kyle Kirkwood, make it 2 in a row.
This is a really tough one. My heart wants to say Felix Rosenquist. I want that feel-good story, but I just don't think it's going to happen. So I'm going to go with my brain, Will Power.
I'm just going to go with a safe bet and say guys won a couple championships in the last 2 years, and Alex Palou.
Oh, that is interesting. My heart says Felix Rosenquist, but I think I'm going to go with Josef Newgarden for INDYCAR. 2 more races still to go, and we got NASCAR at Talladega. It's going to be very unpredictable, so I think we're all going to have different predictions for this one. So again, Nicole, I'll start with you. Who do you think is going to win the race at Talladega this weekend?
Like you said, it's a toss-up, but I think McDowell can definitely do it.
Yeah, I'm going to make that 2 for 2 and go for man on pole, Michael McDowell.
Ben almost made me go this route just because we're talking about if he's an underdog or not. I can't believe this. Todd Gillian, 3 people have picked front row for to win. This is Talladega.
And for me, I'm gonna go with an organization that's been struggling lately. RCR driver. I think Kyle Busch is finally going to get RCR back in the victory lane, and he is the defending race winner. So I think he's going to go back to back in the Talladega Spring Race.
It's been 3 years since this guy won a race, and what was that race? It was this very race in 2021. I think tomorrow is the day Brad Keselowski finally breaks that 100-plus race winless streak. His teammate Chris Buescher and his employee, I guess you can say as well, Chris Buescher, has broken through and won a few of these, but I think Brad is going to get to stand in victory lane himself Talladega tomorrow. That's my pick.
Oh, different varieties there from all the team. I'm going to go for, I've been tossing and turning in between the IndyCar race earlier. I'm going to go for Ryan Blaney. I think he's done well in NASCAR before, and I could see him take advantage of what's going on in the speedway, and I think he could win. Tomorrow, tonight, depending on what time zone you're on. And the final race for pick a winner is Supercars Race 2. Obviously, Race 1 happened yesterday. So who do you think is going to win this one with obviously a dry race predicted? Nicole, I'll start with you.
Ooh, this was a tough one for me. I think I'm just going to go with a safe bet, though, and say Matthew Payne.
For my pick, I'm going to go Brock Feeney.
I'm going to go with Andre Humgarner, make it a sweep.
I think it's going to be a sweep, but not for Andre Humgarner. I think it's going to be a sweep for the Kiwis, though, in New Zealand. I'm going to take the driver on the pole, Matt Payne.
I'm going to go with Isha. I'm going to stick with what I chose earlier in the week and say Brock Finney.
This is the one I've been really umming and ahhing who I think is going to do well, but I'm going to go for a safe bet potentially. I'm going to go with Brown. That's going to be my pick.
It's going to be really interesting, and big thank you to Amber Super Chat, $20 for the Grid Network team. Thank you so much. We'll share it with everyone. Really appreciate it. I assume you really enjoyed the After Dark shows, and this has been a really smooth After Dark show. Just the music on Pick a Winner sort of messed up, but heck, we'll take that. And of course, Grid Life wrap up tomorrow or today, depending on what time zone you're watching. So be sure to subscribe, hit the bell icon so you don't miss any of our programs. View our articles on gridranking.com. Also, you can invest through Buy Me a Coffee, calling the show Mark, Robin, David, Matthew. They invest enough each and every month. And of course, if you want to do a one-time, you could do Super Chat or Buy Me a Coffee. We got an announcement about the brand new YouTube membership as well tomorrow when we officially launch it. So we're very excited to be getting all the support, and we do this for you, the viewers that love motorsports, all the races, and everything about the beautiful motorsport community. We have a lot of fun here, and just thrilled that you tune in and watch us. And of course, be sure to send some funds over to Jackson. Buy him coffee. He is at the racetrack, and we're going to have more folks at the track throughout 2024. We're very excited for this year. For Isha, Jess, Nicole, Ben, Kobe, I'm Joe. Thank you for watching today's After Dark episode. We'll see you next time. Enjoy all races. We'll see you on the wrap-up show.